Good morning. It's so great to see everyone. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Providence, where we love beyond belief. Welcome also this morning, she says, with fingers crossed and gingerly with hope, to our new sound system, which is in place for this morning for the very first time. After so much time and effort and a great deal of care taken with it. So it's the first morning, so things could be a little sketchy, but it seems like it's good, and I really hear a difference. I hope everyone here can. So we're very glad to be able to celebrate that this morning. This is the day we have been given. May we make the very most of it, starting now together. This is our time to warmly greet each other, make sure everyone knows how glad we are to be together, to see longtime friends and brand new faces sharing this space and this time together. So let's get up, circulate around, say hi to the person closest to you or the person furthest away. Make sure no one goes ungreeted and unwelcomed this morning. And now if we could, before we resettle, turn around and wave hi to everybody who's with us at home on the cameras. Hello, everybody. Hello, good morning. Can we get everybody to say good morning? Good morning. Greetings to everybody at home. It's so good that we have these different ways to be together.
Please join me in the words for our chalice lighting that are printed in your order of service. This light
Burns also in our hearts, and it lights our path toward harmony, justice, and hope for all. Our invocation this morning is drawn from the website of the African Methodist Episcopal Christian Education Department, where they have this message: See, the Lord hath given you the Sabbath. Therefore, on the sixth day, he gives you food for 2 days. Each of you stay where you are. Do not leave your place on the seventh day. From Exodus chapter 16, verse 29. And then they ask, with 7 days allotted to us, we should find time for a day or more of rest and worshipful reflection. Will you add rest to your calendar alerts? Can we join together in the words for our covenant? Also in the order of service. As always, folks who are visiting are welcome to share in these words also or not, whatever makes you comfortable. We, the members of the First Unitarian Church of Providence, with respect for the worth and dignity of each person, with wonder at the light we know by many names, and with gratitude for our deep connection to each other and to the larger web of existence, covenant to walk together in our search for truth, seeking the paths of wisdom, compassion, and justice. And our opening hymn is Come, O Sabbath Day, number 204 in the gray hymnal you'll find in the pew in front of you. Can we rise in body or spirit and sing out as we are able? Peace and healing on thy way, and to every one, let a word of blessing go. Thou shalt rest, thou shalt rest. Come Sabbath, let thee part every care of troubled heart. Now the daily task is done. Let a word of comfort come. Thou shalt rest. Thou shalt rest. Work and sorrow cast away. Sabbath is for prayer and play. With the setting of the sun, when a cheery message dawn, thou shalt rest, thou shalt rest.
Our reading this morning is from the contemporary Anglo-Irish poet and philosopher David Whyte. Sometimes, if you move carefully through the forest, breathing like the ones in the old stories, who could cross a shimmering bed of leaves without a sound, you come to a place whose only task is to trouble you with tiny but frightening requests, conceived out of nowhere but in this place, beginning to lead everywhere. Requests to stop what you are doing right now and to stop what you are becoming while you do it. Questions that can make or unmake a life. Questions that have patiently waited for you. Questions that have no right to go away.
Among the joys and sorrows carried in our congregation at this time, we have a sorrow that Steve McCloy fell yesterday and broke both of his wrists. If you were scheduled to have a meeting with him today, he will not be here. So we're sending Steve much care. Ellen Leprosina has a candle of celebration and joy for her daughter Rachel's 25th birthday today. Someone offered a prayer for those who suffer anxiety. It may not be life-threatening, but it can feel that way sometimes. And Tim Burns has lit a candle for his dear father-in-law who died this past week. He said his joyous trombone jazz will be missed. And as always, we have, as too often, we have always the time for which we toll our bell. Whenever there is a mass shooting somewhere in the country, we toll our bell in sympathy and sorrow for those lost, for those suffering, and for the epidemic of gun violence from which we hope and work to heal. Maybe our bell toller isn't quite at the bell. Let's take a moment of silence instead. Our meditation this morning is by the Reverend Lynn Ungar. She's one of our most beautiful writers in the Unitarian Universalist movement. And she wrote this piece, Pandemic, at the beginning of the onset of COVID. And ironically, is it ironic or just a fulfillment? It went viral and became this huge thing in the country. And I think she was on Good Morning America, and because so many people were drawn in by her message. But her message was about time, the nature of time and Sabbath. So this is Lynn's meditation that she wrote at the onset of COVID, Pandemic. After this reading and spoken prayer together, we have a time of silence for personal reflection and prayer. During that time of silence, if you have lost someone close to you in the past year, we invite you to stand or raise your hand in silent witness of that loss. And then we close together with music. What if you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling, give up just for now on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has become clear. Do not reach out your hands. Reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live. To me, one of the most interesting things about Sabbath, about the idea of Sabbath, about the idea of what the reality of Sabbath is supposed to be, is that it is not a luxury. It's not just for the elite or for people with enough leisure to easily carve out the time. It is laid out in Exodus chapter 31:18, where it is one of the original 10 commandments, then understood by many as the most important directives for humanity laid out by God, which says, "Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work. You, your son or daughter, your male or female slave, your livestock, or the resident alien, the sojourner in your towns. For 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, but rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it." So check that out. It is for everyone. Everyone. Regardless of gender or class, regardless even of species, livestock get to rest. And regardless of nationality or belief, even the resident alien shall be free of work, all work after 6 days of work. Sabbath is not optional, imperative for everyone. Now, there is so much in the Bible that I'm glad we have gotten beyond. We don't stone anyone for anything. And we can blend wool and linen to make that rare fabric that is warm yet crinkly. We can plant wildflower fields with different kinds of seed. We can blend donkeys and horses to make those so resilient mules, or marvel at narlugas, the narwhal beluga whale hybrids in the wild. We can eat shrimp cocktail to our heart's content. We can cross-dress if we feel like it. So much more. But there is also a lot of good, a lot to learn from and embrace still in the Bible, and one of the best examples is the Bible's teaching on Sabbath, because many of us do tend to think of Sabbath as a luxury. It is for people with too much time on their hands, or people who are lazy, or self-absorbed, who don't care enough about working for all the imperatives so urgent all around us, anti-racism and the environment and affordable housing and voter rights, all the countless issues that need our time and energy, plus all the daily stuff of living that we put off during the week. Grocery shopping and cooking and home repair and laundry and house cleaning and taking care of babies or children or elders or partners or helping friends to do these things, and on and on. Who has time for rest? Who has time for rest? And what qualifies as rest, anyway? Is it lying in bed? Reading a book? Gardening is a kind of work, but if you want to do it and you don't get paid for it, is it rest? What about other things we like to do or choose to do? We may have circled back now to cooking or home repair even. If it's fulfilling and enjoyable, is it rest? Let's go back to reading. It's pretty inactive and in that way restful, but some reading is pretty demanding, like aerobics for our brain. You know what? I think actually this issue of rest is a rabbit hole. Technically, the commandment says, actually, do not do any work, which is not the same thing. It leaves a lot of room for activities, arguably anything that doesn't feel like work. It's not just about whether we get paid for it, it's also about whether the activity is a chore or a pleasure. Traditional Judaism has a lot of rules and regulations to define what is or isn't a proper observance of the Sabbath, because to do no work, even back then, would have been challenging. Somebody's got to feed that resting livestock. So they quickly came up with some exceptions. There are fascinating details in all of that which have developed over the last few thousand years, and you will be glad or disappointed to know we do not have time to explore them today. And of course, different versions of Judaism and Christianity define Sabbath differently. Unitarian Universalism has never defined Sabbath in any definitive way, and arguably never really observed it, at least in any demonstrable way. And there are maybe many reasons for why we haven't, including some of those ideas I started with Sabbath being a luxury or an indulgence. But another is that the world around us makes Sabbath so challenging. The world around us expects connectivity and activity and participation, and not the slowing down, deliberation, apartness, or differences in what we do and when and how we do it that Sabbath necessarily entails. But the thing is, many of us also think about Sabbath as a great ideal. It's a great ideal. And it is inherently impossible. Time to live differently, time to attend to the Spirit, time that we are given permission by God or tradition or ourselves, permission to not be busy and behind with everything. Time. A cathedral in time, as the great Rabbi Abraham Heschel put it. Think about that. A cathedral we inhabit in time. With all the soaring spaciousness and extraordinary beauty and different light and different sound, all the intention and care and insulation and apartness we have ever experienced just walking into such a space. The church I grew up in, then known as the First Unitarian Society, now the First Unitarian Universalist Society in Newton, Massachusetts, or Fusen, as they inevitably called it in our UU way. Fusen was built like a small stone and Tudor cathedral around 1900, and it has huge Unitarian-themed stained glass windows. And one near the front has always been my favorite, has a very handsome knight in armor, who I developed a crush on when I first started attending in the 3rd grade. But really, the whole sanctuary saturated in colored light from those magnificent windows, filled with dark and elaborately carved wood, and with stone-carved angels holding up this high vaulted ceiling. It is beautiful to be in, especially when the lights are off and the windows are lit from daylight outside and the space is quiet and you feel the presence of the place all around you. To this day, anytime I am at Fusen during the day, which is pretty rare, I try to find a moment to sneak into the sanctuary by myself and soak in that space for a minute or two. But of course, a minute or two is all the time I take there, which is part of this larger issue I've been thinking about for a long time, many years, since before I came here. What constitutes Sabbath? What makes Sabbath possible? And what makes Sabbath impossible? Even though most people think it's a great principle in principle. hypothetically. But when it comes to making it happen, even with the best will in the world, it's so difficult to truly honor Sabbath, to carve out a day from work, a whole day, not just an hour, a whole day on a regular basis, howsoever we might wish to, howsoever we might yearn for it, or believe it could be important for our hearts and minds, our spirits and souls, it remains for so many of us ultimately completely impossible. And in a Unitarian Universalist context, part of why I think it's impossible is because it is impossible to do it alone, just by ourselves, or with one friend, or with one family. One of the few experiences of Sabbath I had on a semi-regular basis for a while growing up was in graduate school. And there was a year when there were a few Jewish women studying there, a very small group, just three or four. And while I was only half Jewish and wholly Unitarian Universalist studying for ministry, they welcomed me and my interest in Jewish studies. Once a month, they had a Friday night Shabbat dinner together, and they invited me to join them. And for that year, I often did join them. And those potluck Shabbat dinners were like nothing I have ever experienced before or since, mostly because during the meal, on and off, amidst the conversations about anything and everything, we sang. We sang traditional Shabbat songs, we made up harmonies on the spot, we experimented and lifted our voices simply and unselfconsciously, sitting together at the table. Looking back at it, it seems so strange to have had meals like that, but we didn't sing with our mouths full, and it was marvelous. Those meals felt sacred, felt like Sabbath. One of the songs we sang was called Dodi Li, and it is lines from the Song of Songs in the Bible. Dodi Li va'anilo, haroeh bashoshanim Dodi Li. My beloved is mine, and I am his. The shepherd grazes his flock amidst the lilies, my beloved. The ancient interpretation of this very romantic, even erotic book in the Hebrew Bible is that it is a metaphor for the passionate love between God and God's people, which is why some of its lines have been turned into Shabbat songs. The choir is going to help me share one of those songs now, singing the melody and a harmony line that I created all those years ago one Friday evening. Apart from hearing it in church, I can only ever hear the song by myself when I sing the melody line and then the harmony line, blending them in my head, because I cannot sing the melody and the harmony alone. I can't sing a Shabbat song properly by myself. It is a perfect illustration of the first of the 2 points I'm exploring this morning, that Sabbath may be an experience of apartness, but it is not one that we can fully fulfill alone. So the melody of the song, I don't know where it comes from. It's just something I was taught at that dinner, goes. And you don't have to sing this, but feel free to join in if you wish. Do, di, li, vanilo, haroe, basho, shanim, do, di, li. Do, di, li, vanilo, haroe, basho, shanim, do, di, li. And the harmony. Do, di, li, vanilo, haroe, basho, shanim, do. two together one more time. Do, di, li, fa, ni, lo, ha, ru, en, pa, sho, sha, nim, do, di, li. Do you feel the way that changes the room? This brings me to the purpose of Sabbath. We've talked about the obvious purpose of taking time apart from work, often known as rest in one form or another. And we often talk about rest as necessary for health and resilience, physically and mentally and spiritually. Rest is what helps us renew ourselves for the days ahead. It is revitalizing and regenerative and therefore necessary. Those are pretty much just facts. And they are not up for debate, and they're not really theology. In thinking more about this very lately, I've realized that I want more from Sabbath than that. I don't want just enough to keep going. When things are really hard, enough rest to keep going isn't enough. It makes me feel like Rocky from the old franchise, you know, in between rounds 7 and 8, and he's up against the ropes, and he's bloody, and he can barely stand up, and they're like, "You're gonna be okay, Rock," and they slice his eye, and they splash water on him, and he staggers back into the ring. That's not enough. That's the promise of a unionized work week. That's not the promise of Sabbath. Sabbath is about time apart, howsoever we want to define it. Sabbath should be generative and not just regenerative. Sabbath should be generative and not just regenerative. By which I mean something that creates freshness in me, something that helps me to new things, new experiences, new goals, new creativity in me and through me, which is so much more than just enough whatever to keep going. And in reflecting on this, I think this isn't or shouldn't be ambitious. I think it's what Sabbath is supposed to be. Time that isn't just sleep or mental, spiritual, physical recovery, but more than that, time that is rich enough, honored enough to strike sparks in us, to kindle the spark that burns in each of us, to help us not just live, but live into the fullness of our personhood and potential, the sacredness and scope that all of us possess and are meant to realize and manifest in this world. Not just regenerated for more of the same, but with room for those divine moments of creation, realization, manifestation. When we make more, do more, become more than we already had, than we already did, than we already were, not because we are pressed to, but because it flows in and through us. Because we have given ourselves, our souls, our divine spark, the time and space needed for the flow to flow. The flow may generate something as simple as a line of harmony to a song. It may be something that becomes part of our living. It may change or fulfill us in tiny or great ways. It may only very rarely show up. But there is a there for us all. A cathedral in time that awaits our presence and that cannot be without us. This is what the poet-philosopher David White means when he lays out that place whose only task is to trouble you with tiny but frightening requests, conceived out of nowhere, but in this place beginning to lead everywhere. From our reading this morning, requests to stop what you are doing right now, Sabbath, and to stop what you are becoming, merely regenerated, while you do it. Questions that make or unmake a life. Generativity. Questions that have patiently waited for you, yearnings and possibilities. Questions, he says, that have no right to go away. David White followed up on that poem because he realized that he needed to spend time figuring out what were his own questions that had no right to go away. And what answers could he find for those questions? So far, he has shared 10 questions he uncovered for himself and the answers he found to them so far. And one of his questions was, what can I be wholehearted about? He said, there was a time many years ago working at a nonprofit organization trying to fix the world and finding the world didn't want to be fixed as quickly as I'd like. I don't think he's a Unitarian Universalist. That I found myself exhausted, stressed, and finally, after a particularly hard day, at the end of my tether, I went home and saw a bottle of fine red wine I had left out on the table that morning before I left. No, I did not drink it immediately, though I was tempted, but it reminded me I was to have a very special guest that evening. The guest was an Austrian friend, a Benedictine monk, Brother David Steindl-Rast, the nearest thing I had to a really wise person in my life at that time or any time since. We would read German poetry together. He would translate the original text. I read the translations, all the while drinking the red wine. But I had my day on my mind and the mind-numbing tiredness I was experiencing at work. And I said suddenly out of nowhere, almost beseechingly, Brother David, speak to me of exhaustion. Tell me of exhaustion. And he said a life-changing thing. You know, he said, the antidote to exhaustion is not necessarily rest. What is it then? The antidote to exhaustion is wholeheartedness. You are so exhausted because you can't be wholehearted at what you're doing, because your real conversation with life is through poetry. Because David White was not yet writing poetry. Well, he was writing it, but in the corners of his life. He says it was the beginning of a long road that was to take my real work out into the world, but it was a beginning. This is a conversation we must all have with ourselves at every stage of our lives, he says, a conversation we so often don't want to have. We will get to it, we say, when the kids are grown, when there is enough money in the bank, when we are retired, perhaps when we are dead. It will be easier then. But we need to ask it now. What can I be wholehearted about now? The other thing I am thinking about is that maybe the cathedral in time, now we're back to me, the cathedral in time depends not only on each of us, but on all of us together. This is part of what Reverend Lynn Ungar proposed in her meditation Pandemic, written at the start of COVID. Because everyone was in it together. She saw that it gave us all a chance to not only lament and fear and struggle, but also to lean into understandings that could only flower then because everyone had to stop together. Sharing Sabbath is an essential element because we all have questions and answers to uncover, wholeheartedness to live into, a cathedral in time that awaits our presence and maybe cannot be for us unless we all invite its creation together. You can't stop. You can't stop. Or seek something fresh if you are still driving and being driven in all the same ways. You can't stop. You can't stop. I can't stop. If others are all driving in the same ways, we are interdependent in our breathing and in our ability to stop or start, to go deep or broad, to keep on keeping on or change in small or large ways. None of us can do that alone nearly as richly and meaningfully and lastingly as we might do it together. This is part of the reason for religious community in the first place. So for all these reasons, and in answer to our church's strategic plan, which calls, among other things, for us to continue to grow our experiences of spirituality and community, we are beginning to plan now for a Sabbath month next January. A year away, which should give us time for this important spiritual exploration together. Throughout that month, different forms of Sunday worship, a quiet time, a quiet day maybe, to pursue calm and fulfillment in a number of different practices together, meetings here in our meeting house and parish house and out in the world, in the woods, at the shore, in our homes. We will explore what it offers us to participate together as a congregation in these different offerings. No one will have to do anything they don't want to. But there will be such a rich variety of possibilities for us all. If this idea already strikes sparks for you, let us know, especially if there is an experience or opportunity you would like to contribute to the Sabbath month. It will not change the rest of the church year. It is not meant to do that, soon or late. But engaging in this community as a whole church for a month will give us room to explore Sabbath experiences together and try different opportunities to feed our souls in fresh ways, not just for renewal, but for generativity, creating new things in and around us. And in doing this, exploring and answering the questions that have no right to go away, that will never go away, until we honor them and seek their resolution, until we sing a new song together. What more is there for each of us, or all of us together? What unplumbed depths, what lessons to share or learn, what yearnings to fulfill, what unexpected blessings will we receive or give? Only time, a cathedral in time, will tell. Amen. And for one more taste of Sabbath, can we revel together in our second hymn, Blue Boat Home, number 1064, in your teal hymnal? Can we rise in body or spirit? And the earth is my blue boat home. Some might sail and my rudder, starry seas. Now the into the deep, drifting here with Can we rally and really sing this last verse together in the spirit of Sabbath? I give thanks to the waves upholding me, feel the great winds urging me on. Breathe the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born above the fathoms, never hover upon have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. This is the time for the offering, our chance to practice generosity, our chance to give back in small or large ways to this church that tries so hard for every single one of us all the time and for all of us together. Thank you in advance for your gift this morning. Thank you for all that you give and all that you do and all that you are. Among the many ways to practice our faith beyond Sundays, don't forget to sign up for the annual fellowship dinner, which is going to be Saturday, March 2nd, so a little under a month from now. This is a potluck dinner by themed table with dancing and lots of fun involved. It was such a blast last year. Oh my gosh. And each table was gorgeous and completely different with its own colors and decorations and food. And then the music was amazing and the dancing was a blast. This year we will also have a youth table hosted by Kai Roberts Speaker. There are links to sign up in all the First U email blasts. So if you're ready to sign up, check out the First U email. We need to finish registration so we can assign tables and people can start planning for their tables and their dinners. You have to register by February 12th. What day is it today? Okay. You have to register by tomorrow. And it is so worth it. You really don't want to miss out. It truly, truly was such a blast last year. It is always a blast to do these get-togethers when it's, when it's so much fun and when there's music and dancing. You can do it today. You can do it by phone using the QR code that are up on signs around our campus. You can use the link that was in recent emails. You can do it live this morning. Find Cynthia Rosengard. Cynthia, can you stand up again? Our worship associate this morning. She will be stationed in the atrium in the parish house after worship, and she will be there to help you get registered if you just want to do it this morning because, we're under time pressure because the deadline is? Right. Don't miss out. Let's make sure we all find the time to get that done today. After fellowship time today, there is a congregational conversation to hear updates on the status of our fabulous strategic plan. Several pieces of the plan are already being implemented, with others right around the corner, and others, you will remember, were staged for different years, so some are yet to come. There are opportunities for church members to volunteer and help reach some of those strategic goals, so please join President Hillary Sammons and Strategic Plan Liaison Peter Larman to talk about where we are and how you can help. Hillary, I know I saw you back there somewhere. Can you stand up? There's Hillary, our current congregational president. Peter's up. No, you got to stand up, Peter. You're just a silhouette against the light. So those are the two people to look for. Where are they going for this meeting? It doesn't actually say in my invitations. In the auditorium, so that's into the parish house and up to the second floor for that meeting. The next Hair Talk, sponsored by our lay ministry team, will be held Sunday, February 25th. Our last speaker shared some great information. Our next speaker will also be from Lifespan. Save the date and keep an eye on the First U Times for more details. And finally, how many of us here are familiar with the Apple TV series Ted Lasso? Raise your hand if you are familiar with that. Okay, so about half the people. It was a really fascinating, very funny, and wry and fascinating three-season series on Apple TV, filmed a great deal with more British than American actors in England. And it is a funny look at the experiences of an American football coach who goes to coach British football, which we call soccer, over in England, a professional soccer team. It is really brilliant as well as funny, and I'm going to use it for a 10-part series on leadership development this spring. So we're going to be showing episodes of Ted Lasso. They're like about 40 minutes in the first season. And then we'll have an hour and a half altogether to watch the episode and then talk about where we see leadership happening in that series. Because as I was watching it, I saw so many interesting, unexpected, and unfolding examples of leadership as the series unfolded. And I think there's a lot for all of us, including me, to learn about from watching Ted Lasso and his example of leadership. Plus, it's going to be fun. Plus, we bought a new popcorn machine that's coming, and there will be popcorn with a fresh popcorn machine. So it's going to be super fun, plus self-development. How can you miss? So please sign up for that, because we need to know which space to use based on how many people. We have a few people signed up, but I'm hoping for lots, because this is going to be a blast and I think also powerful. Our benediction is by my good friend, the Reverend John Gibb Millspaugh, who wrote, "Leave aside the little thoughts that distract you from the depths of your soul. For this is a holy place, and this is a holy time. Join with others in this room, this community of seekers, and together let us find our Sabbath." Can we join in the words for extinguishing our chalice? They are also in your order of service. We carry the flame of peace and love and hope until we meet again. The closing song, May Love Be Your Guide, on the blue pew card. Can we think about that in the context of Sabbath as we rise and join in singing our closing song?